Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. We are excited to be having this opportunity to present a very informative and meaningful program. We are going to wait a moment or two for other people to be able to join us. And in the meantime, you can make sure that you are inviting others to become a member of Israel Forever's movement of virtual citizens of Israel who get to benefit from programs like these. We're going to get started in just a moment. Okay. Aaron, hello. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to our audience around the world who have joined us on this very special program, Wikipedia's Lies Against Israel and How to Protect Historical Truth. I'm welcoming here Aaron Bandler, who is an investigative journalist from the Jewish Journal in Los Angeles, who has been the young journalist who broke the story and helped to expose these very insidious lies that are infiltrating our web through even the most basic information. Wikipedia, a platform that so many turn to for simplified definitions and descriptions of events and people and other elements of information, we are seeing that it has been infiltrated in every possible crevice with distortions and mistruths. And Aaron Bandler has been one of the primary journalists who has dug deep into the issues as to why is this acceptable, why has this become a trend, and also what we can be doing more to stop and prevent the future deterioration of the sharing of knowledge. So I want to thank you tonight for joining us again here at Israel Forever and A Jew Today, our podcast. And I hope that you'll make sure to stay tuned with us as we continue to offer programming like this and opportunities to meet a young individual like Aaron Bandler. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me on, and thank you everyone for tuning into today's webinar. This is a very important subject that deserves more attention.
Well, we're very lucky to have been able to connect you and I so that we can bring these topics and some of the nuances you're going to bring to light tonight to others who really are looking for more than just, shall we say, reading another article from the many articles that are telling us just how deep demonizing Jews and Israel has become in every crevice of society. So we have it in the education, we have it in the academia world, we are now seeing it in the areas of employment, and even in these pages of what should be historical information presented with integrity. Aaron, we're very fascinated by how you can shed some light on this for us. And I want to turn the floor to you and allow you to present this wealth of information so that those who are listening are not only able to learn from it, but actually to apply it. And that's where we're going to be taking our conversation today. So again, thank you. Aaron, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Ilana. So Wikipedia, this is a subject that I've been investigating for the past several years now, specifically in regards to anti-Israel bias in various Wikipedia articles. This has gotten some increased attention in the past year or so after some rather controversial stuff has been added in various articles, and I've covered a lot of that. And so the point of this webinar, we're going to be recapping some of those examples that I have covered. And we'll also be discussing how Wikipedia works, delving into the various policies and procedures that govern Wikipedia. I think what people understand about Wikipedia is that you really want to view it as, for the fellow nerds out there, in some ways it's kind of like D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, in that it's kind of a role-playing game where you really fall in love with the procedures and the policies. Because it really gives those procedures, those policies, those are very crucial to understanding how Wikipedia works, because Wikipedia editors, they speak in that lingo. And so it's important to sort of understand the language of a Wikipedian And so that we will be delving into that in today's webinar. So first thing is, why is Wikipedia important? It is the world's go-to site for information. We all use Wikipedia here. And if you say you don't, you're lying, because we all use it. Everyone uses Wikipedia for information. It's always one of the first results to pop up in a Google search. Studies have shown that students begin the research process by looking at Wikipedia for their coursework. And as I said, we all use Wikipedia in our daily lives. And so what that means is that what starts with Wikipedia eventually permeates its way throughout the culture at large. So that's why it's important to really examine Wikipedia and understand how it works. So here are some examples of bias that I have covered in the past year or so. The first is that there's a Wikipedia article called Gaza Genocide. It used to be called Allegations of Genocide in the ongoing war, and it's now just titled Gaza Genocide. Now, the article does qualify it as accusations and allegations, but as some critiques that I've heard about this from various editors that I've talked to is that the title comes across as taking sides in a highly contentious and emotional and sensitive issue. He also looked, the lead says that Israel is accused of genocide by the UN, by experts, NGOs, etc. But if you keep reading the lead, it doesn't present Israel's side until at the very end of the lead, and just says Israel denies the allegations in the ongoing ICJ case. It's very perfunctory. And it's important. I'm focusing on the lead here because most Wikipedia readers don't read beyond the lead, and most Wikipedia editors know this. Additionally, the lead also says that various observers, including the UN Special Committee and the UN Special Rapporteur, have cited statements that may indicate an intent to destroy, etc. The UN Special Rapporteur, that is Francesca Albanese. She is a very controversial figure. Various U.S. ambassadors have accused her of promulgating anti-Semitism. The French and German governments have also made those allegations against her. She's also being investigated over allegedly taking trips funded by a pro-Hamas group. But you don't get that. The way that's worded in the lead of this article, like it gives her like this aura of legitimacy when she's actually a very controversial figure. And there's a link to my full article on this. My article on this was written in July, so there's been some changes to the Wikipedia article since then. Wikipedia page on Zionism, this really took off on social media. Specifically, where it says in the opening lines that Zionism was aimed at establishing a homeland for the Jewish people through the colonization of Palestine, that the Zionists wanted to create a Jewish state in Palestine with as much land, as many Jews, and as few Palestinian Arabs as possible. Now, in my article on this, I talked to Asaf Romarowski, who is a Middle East historian. He says that the Wikipedia article implies that Jews are Europeans and they've colonized the land. Now, the context was when the Zionists talked about colonization, what they read in Hebrew was that they talked about resettling the homeland, not stealing land that wasn't theirs, which is what the opposition has stated. And so the way it's written in the Wikipedia article now, colonization is used anachronistically. And as for the line that the Zionists wanted as many Jews and as few Arabs as possible in the land, Asaf tells me that there are a lot of my correspondence of looking to show the Zionists looking to find ways for coexistence, and that the Arabs that did stay in the land after the 48 war became today's Arab Israelis. Another example, the Wikipedia article for the Nakba. Nakba is Arabic for catastrophe. That's the Palestinian viewpoint for the 1948 war. And it says in the opening sentence that it was the ethnic cleansing of Palestinian Arabs. Asaf Romarowski tells me that the use of ethnic cleansing here is politicized terminology, not the academic terminology. He talks about how the Nakba narrative is basically Holocaust inversion. He also says the academic consensus for the cause of the Palestinian refugee from the 48 war is about a third, and a third attributed to forced removals, leaving on their own volition, and being told to leave by the Arab leaders. And he also says that anybody who adopts the ethnic cleansing narrative here is an agitator taking things out of context. So those are just a few of those examples. So now we will be discussing a little bit as to how Wikipedia works, operates through a process known as consensus. Now, consensus, according to the policy page, and I include this shorthand here, that we say what's a WP con. I include the shorthand when going over some of the policies because when you look at Wikipedia talk page discussions, these editors just kind of throw out this alphabet soup of sorts of these various policies, and it can be very overwhelming and confusing if you don't know what it means. And so, but what's good about these shorthands is that if you go to Wikipedia search engine, you type in that shorthand, you can then bring up the policy page. So the policy page, it has a flow chart here that describes how consensus works. And basically, the premise is that if you make an edit to an article and it's not disputed, it's presumed to have consensus. But if it is disputed, then you're supposed to take it to the talk page and work out a compromise. On the talk page, every article has what's known as a talk page. You can see the tab that says article is where you can read the Wikipedia article. The tab that says talk is where you can look at the talk page discussions and see editors kind of duke out like what an article should or should not say. So if there is a dispute over some edits, then you're supposed to take it to the talk page and you're supposed to collegially work out your differences, reach a compromise. But this is the internet. So, compromise is not always achievable, especially when it comes to contentious topics like Israel-Palestine. And so what can happen sometimes when there's a stalemate is that formal discussions on Wikipedia can be launched, where editors put in their position on a particular issue with an article and their stated rationale. And what's known as a closer, which is an uninvolved Wikipedian in good standing, renders a verdict based on the numbers and strength of the site policy arguments. Now, numerically speaking, consensus is a supermajority, usually at least 2/3. If there's no consensus, then the status quo content remains. And the examples that I shared earlier, that's all the status quo content. So there have been discussions that show that the numbers are about 3-1 in favor of anti-Israel editors. And one example here, this is what's known as an RFC, request for comment. That is an example of the formal discussion that I mentioned in the previous slide. And here the issue was, should Wikipedia qualify the Gaza Health Ministry's numbers by saying according to the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry? And the consensus here, as you can see by the close that summarized the discussion, was that there was consensus against using the Hamas-run qualifier here. And the numbers were about 3-1 against using the qualifier. Similarly, when there was a discussion over downgrading the ADL's reliability on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, again, the numbers were about 3-1. Now, consensus is not just a numbers thing. The strength of the arguments is also a factor. You can see in this close here that the strength of the arguments were weighed, and they were weighed here too. But when you have numbers like 3-1, like those 3-1 numbers, like those will almost always win the day on Wikipedia. And so that's not to say every discussion on Wikipedia turns out this way in terms of having 3-1 numbers on Israel-Palestine topics, but these two examples kind of reflect what pro-Israel editors are up against in this topic area. So it's important to know the core Wikipedia policies, one of which is in POV, neutral point of view. Wikipedia describes it as basically Wikipedia is supposed to describe disputes, not engage in them, inform, not influence, and that NPOV requires that articles represent all significant viewpoints that have been published by reliable sources in proportion to the prominence of each viewpoint in those sources. That's an important point, because giving due weight and avoiding giving undue weight means articles should not give minority views as much or as detailed of a description as more widely held views or widely supported aspects, and the views of tiny minorities should not be included at all. And so what that means is that a Wikipedia article, it's not necessarily going to be 50-50 in terms of like presenting the arguments. If the academic literature, for instance, says it's like 60% of scholars believe in X, 40% believe in Y, that's how it should be presented on Wikipedia. So in talk page discussions, sometimes they talk about whether or not something is considered due for inclusion, meaning that it's been covered enough reliable sources to warrant inclusion into the Wikipedia article, or if it's undue, meaning it hasn't received as much coverage from reliable sources, and that it should not be given as much space in the article, or that it should be excluded altogether. Verifiability. So what this means is that every time you insert material into a Wikipedia article, it always has to be backed up by a reliable source. The job of Wikipedia editor is to summarize reliable sources. That's it. So when you're entering material into Wikipedia articles, you have to make sure that you are accurately summarizing what the sources say. That's basically what verifiability is. You always make sure that you are summarizing what sources say. Now, on that note, original research. Wikipedia bars original research, meaning that editors cannot put in their own opinions or analyses of the topic at hand. All they can do, as I said, they also can't combine two different sources and reach a conclusion that's not implied from those sources. Again, it's all about summarizing what reliable sources say, nothing more. So it's also the policy known as notability. And so Wikipedia editors talk about if a topic is considered notable, what they mean is if there's significant coverage in reliable sources that there's significant coverage reliable sources to warrant its own Wikipedia article. And here's just reach out from the policy page that talks about this. And when in doubt, if you write an article and it faces a deletion discussion, and when in doubt, you follow what's known as the three sources test, meaning that if you can point to three good sources in your article that provide significant coverage of the topic at hand, then you will usually be on firm ground if your article faces deletion discussions. Not a guarantee, but it's a good rule of thumb to follow. Which then leads to the question of like, well, what's a reliable source on Wikipedia? So Wikipedia defines reliable sources as being independent published sources with a reputation for fact-checking and accuracy. It also says that how a source is viewed by other sources is an indicator for its reliability reputation. This is known as use by others, or UBO, in wiki shorthand. And also, reliable sources don't have to be neutral. Biased sources are considered okay on Wikipedia. It's all about if they promulgate actual misinformation or not. So if you go to the Wikipedia search engine and you type in this shorthand RSP, it will bring you to what's known as the perennial sources list. This is the list of the most frequently discussed sources on Wikipedia. You can see that the source is considered generally reliable, meaning that it's usually okay to use. You have mainstream media sources. You have New York Times, CNN, Washington Post. I didn't mention this here, but The Guardian also falls under that category. But also you have like staunchly partisan sources like Al Jazeera, The Nation, Mother Jones, Jacobin, MSNBC. Marginally reliable, meaning that it might be okay depending on the context. You have articles outlets like Salon, Huffington Post in politics, and Mondoweiss, which is a staunchly anti-Israel news site. Generally unreliable, meaning it should not normally be used. You have New York Post, Free Beacon, Fox News, Daily Wire. I talked about ADL already, and also a couple of anti-Israel sources fall into this category. Deprecated, meaning that it's general prohibition. You have Daily Mail, Daily Caller, Epoch Times, Newsmax. And you have also under this category that's like Al Mayadeen, which is a Hezbollah-run outlet, and Press TV, which is oriented propaganda. So those are the types of sources that are deprecated on Wikipedia. And so, as I said, Wikipedia editors can only summarize what reliable sources say. So take a look at this list, and please feel free to look at what the full perennial sources say, what list is when you have the time. You can sort of see how some of the partisan nature of the sources that are considered reliable and the ones that are considered reliable, how that can kind of manifest itself into skewing content in Wikipedia articles alone. So it's important to understand sources and policies because everything in Wikipedia is all about like what are the sources, what are the policies. As I said, this is how Wikipedians talk to each other. So in these discussions, like it's all about the sources and the policies. That's what they use to claim neutrality. So for instance, when we talk about the Nakba article, the discussion that led to the term ethnic cleansing being used in Wiki voice being a neutral voice in the first sentence was because it was argued that there's so much scholarship that supports the use of the term ethnic cleansing here, that it would be giving undue weight to a fringe point of view to not use it in Wiki voice. And subsequent topic discussions have said that dozens of academic works say that's ethnic cleansing, and each show dozens disagree for it to not be in Wiki voice in the lead. But as I've talked to, as various editors I've talked to have said, NPOV is not a math problem. If you read my article on this Wikipedia article, the Nakba, I have an editor quoted talking about how NPOV, you're supposed to look at the totality of what the reliable sources say on a topic, and then you start looking for commonalities, like what are the most common aspects of the sources, what are the least common aspects, then you kind of like group them together into clusters. But if you're only doing this for one of the clusters, then you're doing it wrong. I talked to other sources who say that quality of scholarship matters, and the fact that there are notable historians like Benny Morrison and Yoav Gelber that dispute the ethnic cleansing narrative here, that's enough to not put it in WikiVoice. Another example is there's an article called List of Islamist Terror Attacks, and the October 7th massacre was kept out of it. And the reason being was that, as the close here explains, there was enough editors who argued that including it would be original research. That they argued that the sources don't show that October 7th was an Islamist terror attack, and there are some who argued that Hamas motivations were political and nationalistic rather than Islamist. There were some who even argued that the whole thing shouldn't be considered a terror attack, whereas others in that discussion argued that sources show Hamas is Islamist, sources consider October 7th a terror attack, therefore it should be considered an Islamist terror attack, not original research, and so it was also pointed out to me by an editor source that the Wikipedia article "Islamism in the Gaza Strip" primarily talks about Hamas, and so that strengthens the argument that Hamas is an Islamist group and should be and October 7th should be included in this article. But again, it comes down to numbers. The numbers were just not there to include it in the list of Islamist terror attack articles. So after seeing all this, and you are inspired to edit Wikipedia, I'm here to caution you that it is not as simple as just going in and making changes. I don't actually edit Wikipedia, I just cover and write about it. But I've been investigating this topic long enough to know what exactly Wikipedia looks for in a good editor. And so, first thing to know is that all of Israel-Palestine is subject to what's known as the 3500 rule in Wikipedia, which means you need to be an editor for at least 30 days and make at least 500 edits to begin editing there. This is also known as ECP, or Executive Foreign Protection. And if you edit in the area before reaching the threshold, it can get you sanctioned. If you do it maybe like once or twice, your new editor, they might leave you off with a warning. But if you keep doing it, you will get sanctioned. And you know that an article falls under this threshold if you see this blue lock with an E on it. That's how you know that it's under ECP protection and you can't edit there unless you reach this threshold. And so the way to do this is don't game it, meaning like you don't take shortcuts to try and reach this threshold. What's good about this is that Israel-Palestine is a very, very, very fraught topic area. It's not for the faint of heart. So, but this rule does that it forces you to have to learn the basics of Wikipedia in non-controversial topic areas. It gives the opportunity to really understand the meat and potatoes of Wikipedia and give yourself a chance to establish yourself as an editor in good standing in non-controversial topic areas. And so, a few basics for editing. You are encouraged to explain every edit with what's known as an edit summary. You're just making a copy edit, you put in your edit summary here. You say copy edit or fixing a typo. If you have disputes with other editors, just take them to the talk page. You want to show that you can work and collaborate with others and work through the disagreements collegially. Something else you can do is you can put articles on your watch list. A watch list is where if you have an article on your watch list, you can see every change happen to an article in real time. You do this by, you see right here, there's this star button. And you can only see this when you're logged into a Wikipedia account. And so you press that star button, that's how you add an article to your watch list. Additionally, when you edit Wikipedia, you start to realize that there are certain regular editors that edit frequently in different topic areas. I want to get an idea of who the regulars are. You can bookmark their contributions. Every editor's contributions are public. So you bookmark them and you follow their contributions in addition to seeing like what's been happening on the articles on your watch list. That gives you a good snapshot as to what happened on Wikipedia in a particular day. Now, if you do eventually reach the 3,500 threshold, and you're able to start editing the Israel-related Wikipedia articles, don't be what's known as an SPA. That's called single purpose account. So if you start immediately editing Israel-related topics right after you reach this threshold, and you're obviously promulgating one point of view, you will be known as an SPA. That is inappropriate for Wikipedia. Wikipedia is supposed to be the sum of all human knowledge. Spread your knowledge around. we all have different interests, whether it's our different hobbies, our fields of work, etc., etc. We all have our unique interests and knowledge. So think about how you can spread your knowledge around on Wikipedia. And if you do edit in Israel-related topic areas and you start have the mindset of, the anti-Israel bias here fires me up, I'm here to fix it. That's what's known as right great wrongs mentality, or RGW, as it's known in Wiki shorthand. That also is inappropriate on Wikipedia, because what a good editor what seeks to do is to genuinely improve the encyclopedia, not carry out a political agenda. So your mindset should be, how can I, what knowledge do I have to share that can help with the encyclopedia? How can I best uphold Wikipedia's principles? How can I make the encyclopedia better? And whenever you edit, you want to make your edits incrementally and always try and seek consensus and compromise. Wikipedia is really all about fostering discussion. And so Israel-Palestine articles, they fall under the umbrella of what's known as discretionary sanctions. And what that means is that admins who are uninvolved in the dispute at hand have the discretion to unilaterally sanction other editors. But most of the time, admins will wait for editors to get reported to various venues on Wikipedia before they take action. There are also various rules in Wikipedia governing civility. One is NPA, no personal attacks, and there are editors who will try to bait you into making a personal attack, and then they will report you. Being excessively kind on Wikipedia wins the day. Hard to do on the internet, I know, but that is how Wikipedia rolls. Editors are also supposed to assume good faith, AGF, when editing. So basically, like if you're in disagreement with someone on Wikipedia, the appropriate mindset is to just assume that this disagreement is just an honest disagreement. You're not supposed to assume that the person you have a disagreement with has any sort of like nefarious agenda at hand. Battleground editing, when you openly have an us them mentality, that's also inappropriate for Wikipedia. Edit warning. So Wikipedia also has policies governing edit warning, which is where you keep reinstating an edit even though it keeps getting undone. One of the rules regarding edit warning is what's called the one revert rule, or 1RR, which is where a revert is when you undo or restore an edit in part or in whole. You're only allowed one revert per article within 24 hours in the Israel-Palestine topic area. But even if you don't violate this rule, you could still be sanctioned for edit warning if you continually try and reinstate an edit. So again, the point of Wikipedia is to foster discussion, not just continuous edit wars. A few other things that can get you sanctioned. Stalking. So as I've mentioned in this webinar, numbers are very important to Wikipedia's consensus process. So if you have one dude that is operating 5 accounts to sway consensus that is against Wikipedia rules, and that is a one-way ticket to getting site banned. There are editors that are very good sniffing this out, especially in this topic area. And there are some rather notoriously infamous stock masters on the pro-Israel side in this topic area over the years. Another is called canvassing. So that's any sort of like vote stacking or campaigning to try and manipulate the consensus process on Wikipedia. That's considered canvassing. That would include any sort of like offsite recruitment and coordination. This has been in the news recently with a Discord channel called Tech for Palestine, where Discord server, I should say, called Tech for Palestine, that had a channel reportedly where editors, but there was coordination to try and implement the Palestinian narrative into Wikipedia articles. And some editors were sanctioned recently on Wikipedia about that. There also kind of have big concerns that this webinar is canvassing. This is not that. This is a purely educational webinar, nothing more. Something else that can get you sanctioned on Wikipedia, if you engage in paid editing and you don't disclose it, that can get you sanctioned. Also, if you have an undisclosed conflict of interest, meaning that like if you have a dispute with someone off Wiki and you want to mess around with the Wikipedia page, that is something that could be considered a conflict of interest. It can get you sanctions. And if you want to write an article, type in article title. If the article doesn't exist, click on create article and start typing. If you're a new editor, the article will be reviewed by an editor with reviewing privileges, and if approved, it will go live. As you gain more experience, you can write an article from scratch and have it go live yourself. Sometimes they can be moved back to draft space if other editors find it too problematic. And of course, they can also be deleted too in deletion discussions. So my closing thoughts here for this presentation is that we need to be thinking about Wikipedia differently. I think that if you talk to the average person on the street about Wikipedia, they just kind of scoff and, just say what takes Wikipedia seriously. But the thing is that, as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, everyone uses Wikipedia for information anyway. It is the world's website for information. And so we do need to be taking Wikipedia seriously. There needs to be more of a spotlight put on as to what's going on there, which is what I've been doing according to the Jewish Journal, and I'm not the only one. Ashley Rinsberg over at Pirate Wires has done some great reporting on this. Dr. Shlomit Lear really got the ball rolling on this subject with her report, the World Jewish Congress. I think she might be on this call. So the other thing is that consensus can change on Wikipedia, and Wikipedia says this, like nothing is set in stone, but Wikipedia can only work when it has enough editors who uphold its principles. So I'm happy to answer. I know that was a lot to go through in a short period of time. So I'm happy to answer any questions during this webinar. I'm also happy to answer questions after the webinar. You can contact me at my email, aaronb@jewishjournal.com. I'm on X and Instagram under the handle @Bandler's Banter. You can read my work at jewishjournal.com. Here's my author page. And that is my presentation.
Well, I think we have to take that in. That was a tremendous amount of valuable and detailed information. Thank you so much for bringing all of that to our attention. It sounds to me like this is a full-time job. I mean, if
Yeah,
there
it
were
is.
anyone who wants to get involved in this, not a full-time job, but it has to be something that you're truly committed on and can focus yourself to dedicate specific lots of time to throughout the days of the week, so that you're not trying to do all of the editing at once and get around those principles that exist as you outlined them. I mean, this really sounds like it's not something just anyone is going to take on. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a major time suck. But the key, as I mentioned at the beginning, it has you have to like really fall in love with the procedures and the policies on Wikipedia, which in a way I have because through covering this for so long, because I just found the whole thing to be very fascinating, and I love to inform people about it. And I think Wikipedia editors, like the ones who are really truly involved, when I'll pull Wikipedia, it's like they too have fallen in love with the policies and procedures of Wikipedia. And so, so that's why it becomes for them, it's like a passion, you know.
Yeah, there's definitely passion is a good word to kind of highlight what would be required for somebody to take this on, because part of our goal in tonight's program was to be able to elucidate all of these many nuances of what it takes to engage in the Wikipedia world and to try and protect historical truth. Whereas on one hand, we want to encourage people to join and be a part and get involved. On the other hand, we see all these obstacles are in our way. Do you, Aaron, think that it is realistic for people to say, I want to learn this language and I want to take it on. I want to do more. Do you think that it's realistic for a general person to be able to delve into that world?
I think so, but it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of practice, and really taking the time to really read through Wikipedia's policies, ask for help from other editors, and really read the talk page discussions to really understand what it all means, how it all works. It is, as you said, it is a major time commitment. So you have to really want to fall in love with the policies and procedures if you want to edit Wikipedia, and want to make the site better and uphold its principles.
Do you think that there is potential to create the kind of change that we would want to see in the information that Wikipedia is sharing about Israel and Jewish history?
I think it depends on who you talk to. I mean, I've talked to some sources who suggest that that who think that like it's it's hopeless and that it's better to go to some of these alternatives to Wikipedia that are out there right now. And I talk to others who say that that it is possible for Wikipedia's principles of neutrality to be restored. It's just going to take some time.
And you think it's time that's worth investing? Or do you think that Wikipedia eventually will be so co-opted by terror-driven language that it will make itself obsolete as an information sharing platform?
Well, if Wikipedia becomes obsolete, it will be because Google stops making it so relevant. Because I think Ashley Rensburg has written about this in Pirate Wires. Google, as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, Google puts Wikipedia as among like one of the first searches, first results pop up in a Google search. That's why it's so relevant. And there's been talk about how Google funds Wikimedia Foundation, which is not how that oversees Wikipedia and so forth. So as to whether, again, like, is it time worth investing to make Wikipedia better? It could be, I mean, it's hard to say what the future holds for Wikipedia exactly. But what I do know is that more people needs to be more of a spotlight put as to what's happening over Wikipedia, which is what myself and others are doing.
And I think that taking it to the people is going to be the next essential step. So when we think of the kinds of individuals who could be involved in this type of, shall we say, desktop activism, right? Of course, preventing the canvassing and all of these red flags that exist in our way, I do think that there are probably some good audiences and communities in the world who could be actively involved. Students who are learning, who are looking to improve their historical knowledge, and then discover in their own research that they've found evidence of a biased representation of information. So people who love research and who like history, that would probably be one audience. I would think also in even the retiree community. Do you think that that is also a group of people who have a lot of time on their hands, very passionate about word usage and historical knowledge? Maybe that's another community that could find themselves learning this language. Do you think that that's from your experience on that back end? Do you think it's feasible to try and teach these tools, help these people? And last part of that question is there any way to coordinate that effort while not falling into the canvassing trap? Is there any way for Jews to come together and say, we're going to do this as our contribution to fighting the war of truth?
Well, I think that the communities you mentioned, yeah, they absolutely would be good target audiences to edit Wikipedia. And as I said, like, you want to spread your knowledge around. So anyone that has any sort of like unique knowledge that they want to share with Wikipedia can edit. But as far as the canvassing question goes, I mean, I'm not comfortable suggesting any sort of coordination of sorts, because once they're getting to that once they're getting to that territory, that's where canvassing becomes an issue. What I will say is that there are editathons that are put on by various Wikimedia chapters that are like um that like basic editing 101 training sessions. And I think if people want to get more involved with Wikipedia, those are good places to start. If you can find Wikimedia chapters in your local area, find one and see if they have an editathon or have some sort of like meetup or whatever. And that's a good place to start learning about the tools, uh, the editing tools for Wikipedia and how it all works.
It's very interesting when we think about the type of awakening that has happened since October 7th to all of the undercurrents of anti-Semitism and lies that are spreading really everywhere. I think that probably you mentioned at the very beginning that Wikipedia editing is kind of like Dungeons and Dragons. I would be
Yeah.
interested to know, if maybe some of the people whose identity has been awakened and who love that style, never having considered this as an alternative before, maybe there is a future for growth of Jewish identity and connection, communal connections through this type of work. You mentioned local chapters and meetups. So if it's got a social dynamic, then basically it's not considered the canvassing risk.
It's not considered canvassing as long as there's not any sort of like coordinated effort to try and manipulate the consensus process toward a political viewpoint. So as long as it's just like you know, general basic editing training and stuff, like it's fine.
For me,
Right.
I think it's also about getting those historical facts. So, for example, and you had made a couple of mentions about how this is like a discussion of the editors, that it's kind of, there's
Yeah.
this ongoing share your knowledge. And it's funny because most people go to Wikipedia, go because they don't have the knowledge. They want to
Yeah.
get it. They want to get it. And so they don't know, where to look. But often people are finding simplistic answers to their question on other information discussion boards like Quora or Reddit. I've
Yeah.
heard of groups coming together trying to really, again, it's not creating an army in order to, I'll use that same language, canvas together and make, no, but it's a support system, a way that people can say, wow, I'm up against this. And just to be able to give each other the kind of support because we all share one goal. And the goal is to protect the truth of Jewish history and Israeli history. It is being tarnished everywhere. The articles, the list of the sources that you mentioned, a couple of those who are, relatively still reliable. Mondo Weiss is considered
Yeah. It's
relatively
crazy.
reliable, but ADL is not. That is, at its core, anti-Semitic. Would you agree with
Yeah.
that?
I mean, so I think it's important to understand that because the ADL is considered like a more of an advocacy organization, it's going to have less weight than the news outlets that meet the standards for like news organizations, which is having their own editorial board and so forth. So that's why I tend to avoid comparing the ADL to like Mondo Weiss and Al Jazeera. So I think the more apples to apples comparison would be like ADL with like I think I've mentioned this in my slide, but Amnesty International is considered generally reliable on Wikipedia. Beit Selim is it doesn't have official rating on the list, but it is. I mean, it's discussions is always treated as a very reliable source. So those sources are kosher on Wikipedia, but the ADL
Mhm.
is not anymore. At least not when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And then with Al Jazeera, I think more apples to apples comparison would be like, Al Mayadeen or something like that, because Al Jazeera is Qatari funded. And we know that Qatar funds Islamist terror groups like Hamas. I did a whole cover story in the Jewish Journal about this in October, about how Sheikha Moza, who is the royal family matriarch of Qatar, had a tweet or a post on X that eulogized Yahya Sinwar, who was the mastermind of October 7th. And so that's why I think that's more apples to apples comparison, at least with Al Jazeera. Of course, Wikipedia, if you mention that Al Jazeera is funded by Qatar, editors will just dismiss it, and they'll just like, yeah, well, the BBC is funded by Britain's government. And that's considered reliable here. But like, it's not the difference is the British government doesn't fund terrorists. So that's how these discussions can go on when it comes to reliable sources on Wikipedia.
It's very interesting what you're saying. I think that the big question of this reliable source is something we're facing in society anyway and everywhere, because we cannot rely on mainstream media. You cannot rely on accuracy in, of course, social media. And now we're seeing we cannot even rely on accuracy in online dictionaries. We've got some questions from our participating audience that I do want to make
Yeah.
sure to ask. But before I do, that last point that I of other online dictionaries, do they have similar policies? And are they also infiltrated? One of the questions asked here is that it seems that it's just a takeover by the anti-Israel movement. Are we seeing that on other online dictionary platforms as well?
I really have no idea because I haven't taken the
No
time to
idea.
look
Because
into it. I just,
Wikipedia is this
yeah,
open source dictionary, as opposed to, for example, because I can tell you on the definition of pogrom, which has become a very controversial term these days. What was October 7th a pogrom? Was Amsterdam a pogrom? What is a pogrom? And really, if you look at about 20 or 30 different pages, one of the only pages that actually has the accurate definition of pogrom is the Encyclopedia Britannica. The rest are all completely distorted. And very often I see that they do have an anti-Israel or anti-Semitic slant, even when it's referring to something that is about anti-Semitism. But let's get to the questions that we do have
sure.
here, because I understand you can't answer on the other online dictionaries. And you and I have actually discussed otherwise that there are Jewish sources projects like this that do protect. And I love to feature the Jewish Virtual Library, which I think is a very fundamental historical resource, but it doesn't replace what people are using in Wikipedia. Are there other places you would recommend? You mentioned a few might be in existence.
Well, first I want to just point out that Jewish Virtual Library is actually considered generally unreliable on Wikipedia. So I just want to make sure people know that. Um, any other places? I have. I mean, Jewish Virtual Library is usually like my go-to for this stuff. So, like I said, there are some alternatives to Wikipedia out there, but they're still kind of in their infancy. So, and other and in the past there have been alternatives to Wikipedia that have been tried and they've all failed. So we'll see if any of these alternatives end up going the same direction or not.
I think that it's very important to recognize the involvement of the common people around the world getting their hands and their fingers moving, because we are outnumbered. And it just seems that way, that all of these policies that are put into place only inhibit the protection of the Jewish ancestral story and Israel's legitimate rights and Israel's legitimate defense systems. How are we to get around it? I have one of the questions that's asked here is, does the pro-Israel tech industry actually speak with the leaders of Wikipedia? Do the ADL and the Anti-Defamation League and AJC, the American Jewish Congress, need to engage at higher levels? Are they doing it? What about Congress? So those are some questions that have come in.
So I know that like after the ADL's reliability was downgraded, they sent a letter to the Wikimedia Foundation asking them to, and it was them and other Jewish organizations that I think signed on to the letter, asking for it to overturn. The problem with doing that is, and I think this is where you understand how Wikipedia works, is that Wikipedia is not a typical company or organization. It's all driven by the consensus of editors. So the Wikimedia Foundation, that's the nonprofit that oversees Wikipedia, they don't get involved in the consensus process. So the ADL and other Jewish organizations can send as many letters as they want to the Wikimedia Foundation. It won't do anything because the Wikimedia Foundation does not interfere with the consensus process on Wikipedia. It's all about the editors and what they decide.
The
So
consensus is biased. The
of course it is,
consensus,
yeah.
we know, and we have the evidence that this is biased, and you showed us on the 3-to-1 ratio as one example. I'm sure others can be and have been discovered. If we know the consensus is biased and anti-Semitic and anti-Israel, all fed through the same brainwashing tactics that the propaganda has achieved in every other media sphere and in education systems, then how is it that we cannot change that consensus system?
Because well, as I said in this webinar, it all comes down to numbers, and that's really what wins the day on Wikipedia. It's all about the numbers.
Wow, it's so here's another question that came in, because it's disheartening to know if it's all about the numbers. And we know we do not have them and never will, because we cannot become as a minority. And you had mentioned that one of the questions that was asked here is, does Wikipedia have any initiatives to reconsider whether it is representing minorities fairly? But what you've highlighted is that Jews as a minority actually have no ground on which to stand to demand fair representation because they don't meet the consensus. Is that correct?
It's more about it's all about what the sources say. You have to argue everything through Wikipedia's policies and sources. And so look, the anti-Israel crowd is very good about doing that, and they have the numbers in their favor on Wikipedia, and that's really what it comes down to.
I have a question.
So
Is
yeah,
the Bible considered a source on Wikipedia? Is it considered a
I
reliable
think
source?
that probably not. I think it's Wikipedia. I first mentioned this in my presentation, but Wikipedia editors give very high deference to academic scholarship, to scholarly literature, and of course, there's a lot of scholarship in the Israel-Palestine topic area on both sides, and it's good to know both of them. But as we know from what's been going on the campuses in the past year, a lot of academics tend to lean in one direction. And so that's why I've had Edgar tell me that like it can be hard sometimes to counteract anti-Israel propaganda on Wikipedia when you just have all these scholars that they can throw at you, who are very critical of Israel, and it becomes like a close feedback loop of sorts.
Very interesting. It's very interesting. I'm kind of, I'm not sure how to absorb this reality that the most popular online dictionary is just going to continue to be a platform through which propaganda and lies is going to be spread as legitimate truth. And
Yeah, I
if
mean,
we
well,
have no,
that's
go
where I
ahead.
keep saying that like it needs to be more people highlighting what's going on there. Like we need to be talking about Wikipedia
Is
more.
there a reporting mechanism? That's one of the things that, for those who don't want to, let's say, get involved in editing, is there, because it is so time consuming, and I wonder if there could be a smart system set up to allow people to create pockets of time where they're able to dedicate and be a part of this numbers that will somehow skew the consensus, I guess, and allow for integrity in the representation of Jews and Jewish rights in Israel. But is there any sort of reporting of an article that can be done? Not editing, but actually reporting to Wikipedia that this is a biased article with misinformation.
I mean, that's a great question.
It
I
doesn't exist, by the way, in mainstream news at all. There is no rubric, there is no place where you can say this article is full of lies. Not from Amnesty International, not from Al Jazeera, and not from Haaretz. I mean, there's nowhere to actually say, I flag this as lies.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think. I mean, I know sometimes they talk to historians for feedback. It's also I've been told. And also on talk pages, if you don't have the 3,500 threshold, you can like make a edit request. For someone who isn't that threshold to like make a change. But like most of the time, it's like a typo. It'll get
I've
rejected.
actually done that. No, I've done that. A request,
You've
you
done
mean
that.
the
Okay.
edit request, right?
Yeah.
And I've done it in an attempt, this was years ago, because as you said, this is not a new issue. This is just something people are becoming increasingly aware of because
Yeah.
our own awareness has grown since October 7th. Jewish identity is on the rise. People are looking for what more we can do and what more we need to understand. So I've tried the request to edit and gotten rejected again and
Yeah.
again and again. And you just get kind of fed up, like, why should I bother? Do you think that people should still bother?
Well, people should still bother because because Wikipedia is the world's exclusive site for information. Yeah, it is worth bothering. Nothing else. Just to see, it could get to see for themselves. What goes on there, how biased content can make its way into articles, and how some of these editors will just stubbornly refuse to change it. So yeah.
Great. I think that that's an important thing for everybody to realize, that whether or not you are an experienced editor or not, whether or not you are an expert in the history, because you too can go and find accurate resources that you can refer to that serve that three sources, right? That's the three sources test that Aaron, that you highlighted. Aaron, will we be able to make some of your points accessible to our visitors and our participants tonight after the fact?
Well, I think
Should
that
they want to learn more?
this is being recorded, right? So
It
they can
is
see it
indeed,
there.
and we look forward to sharing this. We want people to be able to review again your presentation so that they can hear. I think you did a great job, and again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
But what this process is that can't be, that can help us to discover the biased information, to identify biased sources themselves, to bring the sources that we can bring. I really think that this is an innovative way to encourage people who are looking to make a difference. They are not a rally goer. Maybe they don't feel like they're a public speaker. maybe they are just looking for a way from their comfort of their home and in the fabric of their life, as I always say at Israel Forever, that this can be a way that you can just take a few minutes of your day, find an article, try to get familiar with the language as Aaron has described for all of us and taught all of us, and learn how this can be something that we can do. Because what we're starting today can have a great impact, even if it takes a few years. Sometimes the biggest change that we can make is by having some patience and a long-term commitment, not expecting, not, overnight it's going to change, because it's not. And we just need to stay the course and encourage more people to be using their voice and using their fingers in creative ways. We have another question here before we wrap up. I do really want to be able to share this. But have other minority groups actually complained about Wikipedia lying or fabricating or creating falsehoods through editing? That's a great question. I want to make sure we answer.
That's a great question. I would say that I think something that gets talked about a lot is there's something called the gender gap on Wikipedia, which is that it's something like only 10% of editors are female on Wikipedia. And so I know that's discussed. Beyond that, I really can't say.
I'd have to say I would be fascinated to take that piece of information further and see about the women's rights and how October 7th and the rapes are referenced within Wikipedia, because I think that is also a very crucial issues of the hostages, children as hostages, actions of the Red Cross. I think that there are probably some pages where, if we're not only looking at the Israel conflict, Gaza conflict, and only those terminologies, maybe we can broaden just how far we're able to make sure truth is protected and facts are represented. I think that reference to women and women editors and women's information is important. Another question we have here: has Wikimedia or the supervising editor staff, in whatever form it exists, considered this issue in a more general form? The link that's provided is Tyranny of the Majority, which is a Wikipedia page. Do you have any information, any knowledge of this? Any safety rails that have been set up in order to work against this type of general
No,
behavior?
like I said, everything is all just the consensus across by editors, and the Wikimedia Foundation doesn't. It doesn't intervene. I mean, sometimes Jimmy Wales, who's the co-founder of Wikipedia, like, he might get involved in certain disputes, but at this point, he's kind of more of a glorified figurehead. So.
Wow, it would be really fascinating for us to uncover who are the people who are helping to oversee, and how can we open up their humanity? How can we open up their heart to recognize that this is not a typical issue where consensus numbers can actually help create change and protect the future of information and civilization? Because only if we can maybe encourage others to see that we are a minority and we are being silenced, and we are having all of our history changed. And the only reason we're not able to protect that information is because we will never reach the numbers of consensus. So I do think that I would like to encourage people who are listening to also be creative in how you translate Aaron's guidance and Aaron's teachings tonight. How can we activate it in more creative ways? How can you talk with friends? Find your local edit-a-thon. Is that what it's called? An edit-a-thon?
Yeah.
Yes. I think that that would be so important into creating meetups with fellow-minded individuals. Tech for Israel would be fantastic, but we all know there would not be only one opinion being shared and one agenda. Our agenda has to be the agenda of protecting Jewish rights and Jewish historical truth for the sake of Israel and for the sake of the thousands of years that we continue to live out. So, Aaron, I really want to thank you. You've highlighted some very important information for all of us. I hope that all of our listeners have gotten their questions answered. Please feel free to reach out to us at Israel Forever or to Aaron directly. He shared his email with you so that you can ask the questions that you need answered, because as we all know, it truly is about the questions that we ask, and how we help to propose solutions so that we are doing as much as we can to use our time, to use our energy, to be a part of the fight for truth, the fight for Jewish rights, and the fight for the future. So, Aaron, thank you again. Any closing words for our listeners today?
Well, thank you. Well, thank you again for having me on. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, listening to this. As I said, this is a very important issue that needs it needs more attention. It needs more spotlight on it. And so, I just, if you have a takeaway from today's webinar, it's just that pay more attention to what's happening at Wikipedia, and take what it says seriously. That'd be my closing thoughts.
You know, we keep saying that when your enemy tells you what they're going to do to you, we've reached the point where we have to believe them. When we see that the information is being so distorted, we have to recognize these patterns. Thank you, everybody, and we hope you will find the page on Wikipedia or anywhere in the internet that you might find it where you say, I'm going to raise my voice, I'm going to get involved. Maybe we don't yet have a reporting system, but maybe one of our listeners here can say, let's create it. That is how we make change. As virtual citizens of Israel, as the Israel Forever Foundation, we are so proud to be able to bring you these types of experiences. So stay connected and stay involved wherever you may be in the world. And Aaron, continue your great work as an investigative journalist and representing the voice of the Jewish people in some media with integrity. We greatly appreciate your work, and we look forward to seeing what you continue to share with us.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Take care, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight.